Hello, my name is Bianca Rowena,
And I'm Stephanie Costigan.
and you're watching
Positively Literary.
And today's topic is rewriting history. I don't want to say historical fiction because we're going to talk about Bridgerton, obviously.
Before we get into that, should we start off with the week?
Oh, yeah! I feel like I was productive this week.
And your hair?
Oh, that was part of my week. I tried something new, and my bathtub looked like a murder scene. Like, it did. There were just like splashes against the wall.
Yeah, I know
and
what
it
you
was
mean.
red
Like
splashes. And it was almost like a brownish red where it just looked like
I wish you took a picture of that. Tell me about your drink.
Yes. So it's non-alcoholic. It's like a passion fruit tea, but it's a latte. Yours is red.
This is a herbal tea. It's sweet tar.
Sweet tar.
And
do you know what's in it?
no.
Oh, that's
Oh,
nice.
it does smell sweet though.
So I encouraged you to wear this hat because to me, it makes me think of Downton Abbey. When they actually went from one style of dress and then these new fashions were coming out. So then as the seasons went along, they had different fashions, and this is more of the later fashions.
I like this kind of hat. I was telling her I do journalism and I have a coat that matches this.
We started talking about Bridgerton.
Yes, and how I guess some of the people are frustrated with the authenticness. They're like, it's not exactly because she's wearing lipstick. I've even heard comments on Facebook. Like they were saying, the queen being like
Of
real
color?
Yeah, of color.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's part of the reason why I love it. So they are rewriting history, but in a positive way, sort of.
And I guess that's your preference, right?
I was thinking of how to explain why I loved the fact that they just did different ethnicities, different colors and everything, and everyone was equal because they could be with the rich people, and it didn't matter, like they had all types.
It was actually really neat.
Yes,
if you think about it.
It was encouraging to me. So, and I thought of this book that I read. It seems off topic, but it's not, I promise. It's called Tell Yourself a Better Lie, and it's by Marissa Peer. So she is a therapist to the stars, like Hollywood stars kind of thing. She's a very, very good therapist because people pay her a lot of money. So just at the very beginning, I think it was page 10, the title is Tell Yourself a Better Lie, Edit Your Story, and Rewrite Your Life. So she's talking about real people kind of rewriting their history in the way they perceive their history, but for benefits. And that almost makes me think of how Bridgerton is smart to have done that. So I was going to read this a little bit. Okay, the point is not that we verify those memories' exact truthfulness, but rather that we accept that the emotions triggered by those memories are creating an unhelpful storyline for that person. We allow that person to tell themselves a better story about what happened so they can heal. And so the reason I thought of this book, why can't we do that with stories? It's fiction. So it's historical fiction.
Well, the setting is historical, right?
Yeah.
And then but it's fiction.
Well, some people would argue that the setting also is historical, but it's fiction, and so why can't we play around with it to write a better story like Marissa Peer talks about? So what she does in therapy with her clients and stuff is it's almost like looking at it in a different way. You could say I was abandoned as a child, or you could say like I had the opportunity to become stronger. Oh, I'm definitely not saying it the right way.
I know what you mean. Like, no, I get what you mean.
So it's a rewriting of your personal history,
I think, when you're a writer, the world is your oyster. Sometimes being a writer can even be a little dramatic. It's like when you're telling a story of a scene, I think we were talking about this, how it's like way more dramatic than reality because we're storytellers and we feel things so much more deeper sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I love writing. That's my jam, is the historic fiction or historic fantasy. So I've seen another argument come up about this. And on the other spectrum, I guess, or side of things, is like some people are like, oh, this is not authentic. And they're like wanting it to be more historically correct. For example, like I think it's neat how Bridgerton approached it, but I've also seen people like of color feeling upset as well.
Oh,
because
tell me about this.
They're feeling, from what the comments I read at least, okay? I can't speak in their behalf, but the comments that I read and the concerns that were coming out was that I feel like we're in a time period now of realizing how history was written kind of biased. So that's a big thing in historic fictions, right? How some history that we were taught in school is very biased.
So that's, history books, not necessarily fiction.
Yeah, more like what you're taught. So when someone's telling a story, what they're feeling is that they're trying to almost brush it under the rug of the abuse that took place historically to their people, right? And they feel like it's almost, I can't say they feel because I don't know how they feel, but from what I was reading and the concerns that were brought up, they were saying that it's frustrating because it's almost forgetting what they went through.
So, and that's what I thought when I thought about this and the one side. I was like, you're going to disagree. You'll probably be on the other side because there is that argument about accurately portraying the things that people went through so that we don't repeat history,
It's like an example, right? That sometimes
to remind us.
Yeah, to remind us. Some historic fictions are purposely written for the purpose of recognizing patterns in history.
Yeah.
Where others, like Bridgerton, like you have different styles of how people present historic fiction, right? What if in another idea of a world things were more equal?
Yes, and I think Bridgerton is more of an alternate reality, and they try to show us that by having music that is nowadays that is made into classical music, just to remind the viewer that we're not trying to do history
rewrite.
Yeah.
Well, like, yes and no. We're not trying to change how history actually is, like the facts. It's just the setting is.
Well, they are kind of changing the facts because, like you said, the queen is of color. Like, they have all these different things that maybe wouldn't be factual for that time, but it's a fictional world. Just like a science fiction fictional world. I think where people get maybe a little bit upset is because it's human history. Because you have these fantasy books, and they have a fictional world on a different planet, and it could be anything. It's a fictional world.
Yeah.
Well, so is Bridgerton. But
I think it's the way you perceive it. Like, reality isn't reality in people's minds, because like everybody builds their own reality and it's based off their feelings.
what about, have you seen Hamilton? The play?
Sounds for yes, Hamilton.
You saw the play?
I didn't see the play, but I've heard of it.
Okay. Same with me. It's so expensive.
I know.
to go and see it. My friend went to see it, but I think she flew to Toronto. Like, it's coming to Canada, but only to Toronto. So this one, it's history, more of American, like USA history.
Okay.
And I think that they wanted to make a point with the facts and keep the facts of history in there. But again, it's an alternate universe because they're rapping. They rap through the whole thing.
Interesting.
So I think the concern is that if we just do anything we want and just throw all the facts out the window, then younger generations might get confused about what history really was like. And is that important? Can we, like Marissa Peer says, that we should do for our own personal lives, write a better past so that we move forward?
I've seen so many debates on this, so I think there's a danger to doing that a little bit. Like, if you just fully do that, there is a danger to it.
I'm on the opposite end where I'm like, let's just move forward. And I'm going to talk about another example, which is slightly different but the same. And you're on the other end, which is like, let's not forget what happened.
Let's not forget, yeah, exactly. Let's recognize these patterns so they're not repeated, right? But you know what's interesting? I was looking at some of the debates going on with the whole Bridgerton thing,
Yeah.
And there was a piece, apparently, near that time frame, there was, and I have to fact check this, so I don't know for certain, because you always have to fact check what people share, because you never know, right? But apparently there was an authentic looking picture of a queen during that time that was of color, and she was the first colored queen.
Well, and it depends. Do they live in a, let's say in a different country, they would have their own royalty of that country's, right?
She was
Or is
wearing
this-
a powder wig, though.
Okay, so this is like Britain.
With history and rewriting history, it is so easy to do that and confuse people, like blur the line of
Yeah.
reality with non-reality, that people actually think it's historically correct or historic facts when it's not. So that's the fear.
I think it can be scary because now we have AI. So I mean, maybe we'll get into that in one of our episodes. AI, right?
That's a whole nother.
And you can see images and stuff, and you could really rewrite history. Like, could that be used to some benefit? So the example I was going to give, when they started making entertainment for like non-straight, let's say one of the characters was not straight in.
You mean like kind of like the LGBTQ?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then at the beginning you'd see the persecution, what they go through, and like the persecution, all that. But now, for example, I watched this TV show where the detective was LGBTQ and he was the detective. And that's fine. It wasn't, again, about the persecution or having a really difficult time coming out with to others about who he is. It was just, that's just who he was. So to me that feels like inclusion. So I guess there's a place for, let's have this story showcasing what the troubles a certain people go through, or let's have a story and include them, and it doesn't have to be about that. It could just be an inclusive story. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think it's, but on the flip side, sorry.
I knew you'd be the flip side.
On the flip side, I guess the concern is like things can be repeated again, right? Like, or we don't want the newer generation to think it was all sunshine and butterflies, because then they can repeat it, right?
You mean like they could start bullying?
If they don't know, like, you know, it could happen. Like, history does have a way of repeating itself, especially when we forget about it, you know, or when we paint a rosier picture.
Or do we move on and just say we are at a point where there's equality, let's not keep rehashing the past? I know that we're on opposite ends of this, and you know what I'm fascinated about is the comments. I'm hoping we'll be getting comments at the bottom because I want to see what people say.
I hope if there is a debate that it's a healthy debate and not a mean debate. Just putting that out there, because I think there's room for like discussion. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm not saying it's bad to paint a nicer past. It's entertaining, and it's nice to be like, oh wow, you know, the possibilities if things were like this is really interesting. But with that said, I still think there's a danger. Like, I feel like it could become like a utopian.
Welcome back. Our camera stopped.
It ran out of space.
It ran out of space. So we were on point with having the camera battery full, and yet it still stopped. We needed that break because I needed to fill up my drink because this tastes amazing and yours tastes a little less amazing, I've heard.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, what is it about your drink you're enjoying as you take a sip?
You know what? I think that I like that there's oat milk in it, and I don't usually have tea with oat milk. But it's kind of what I asked for at Starbucks. I love it, and it's cool, nice and cool. But yours tastes a little off. Okay,
I actually don't like mine. I'm gonna be honest.
This is good because it's not a promotion, so you can actually not like it.
It's very acidic. It's not my cup of tea.
Well, I'm glad that we're not sponsoring that tea.
Yeah. Not recommended.
Okay, so I was thinking I wanted to give one more example on the side of not so much rewriting history, but looking at the past in a more positive way if possible. I don't know, my side.
It is rewriting.
It is. Okay, and you're on the other end, and I knew that you would think that. So I was watching this YouTube video. Sometimes I'll watch YouTube videos on women in business. This lady is an amazing businesswoman, and she makes millions, probably billions at this point, dollars. And she talked about how, so we've been through a lot. Women have had a lot of things in the past where we were kept from progressing in business specifically and all this stuff. And she encouraged the viewers to not kind of like looking at ourselves as victims all the time, and just to say, well, now I have, even if I am stunted in a bit because men have dominated, but like, let's say they have an advantage in this business area or this business area. Even if it's true now, not to go in thinking of it that way. You know, maybe trailblazing a new path. So I don't know if that's a good example, but what I'm saying is, do we want to keep reiterating, or do we want to say we are a new present, and we don't want to keep thinking of ourselves as victims? I think what she was saying is how we feel and think about ourselves. So I'm not sure if all of that is making sense. I'm really curious about what people are going to say in the comments, because I have sort of an argument that I might not be articulating in the perfect way.
For me, actually, it's interesting because, like, when you're speaking about that, and we won't go into that specific topic because I think it's a whole nother topic of, but, like, it's so interesting because I actually had a change of heart recently because, like, I don't know, doing reporting in journalism, I have very intimate contact and get to see the system very intimately. And I've actually recognized that not much has changed. When you look behind the scenes and work behind the scenes like I have, there's actually a lot of things that I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize. I can't go into it specifically.
So are you saying kind of like in maybe the industry of journalism and it being a boys' club? Because I've had a...
Not quite.
Not that? Okay.
Not the industry of journalism.
Okay.
I'm talking about like how I've covered so many stories and just working with politics and also policing and stuff like that.
Okay.
Because like my beat is homeless and crime. And working in that, I have actually recognized in the industry that there's a lot of things that need to be corrected. And it's very unfair to women. And it really reminds me of the past history that I've researched on for women. And after working and talking to so many victims, I've recognized that there are a lot of men, no offense to men, there's like good men out there. I have an amazing man. I'm actually very pro men. But like, I've recognized there's a lot of protection on men who are harming women. Like there's, and I know like, working in journalism, there's a lot of organizations like, we do this, we do that, and advocate, but when it actually came down to it, they didn't actually help. It was actually it made me quite sad. So I'm like, you know what? You guys are promoting that you're really good organizations and that you have programs and government things to help victims, but there's actually not. Realistically, that's just commercial.
So you're saying
not that much.
Like, you're saying it's too soon to just be like, we're no longer victims. We can just trailblaze and, you know, that
there has to be a change in the system before we can ignore, you know, like, so.
Okay, this is an interesting choice of words.
Yeah.
You're saying ignore, and I'm saying rewrite.
Sorry, yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
that is your side, is, are we ignoring the things of the past if we don't include them in historical dramas and stuff?
So
like the true past of what people went through.
Exactly. I guess the way I think like that is just because my job, and I do see a lot of sad circumstances, and that's why I'm so passionate about, like, we need to bring up history and we need to reflect in order to truly heal. And I've talked to a lot of Indigenous people as well, and they have kept bringing up their concerns. What I'm hearing repeatedly is they don't want it forgotten and brushed under the rug. They need to address it in order to heal. And I know it's negative and it hurts, and we're like, why can't we just make it positive? And I understand that. But sometimes in order to heal, you have to face the reality, you know, as harsh or blunt as it is. And I think that's why, like, for my book of Land of the Dragon, you know, it's a historic fantasy. There's fantasy, right? There is different world building, but I really tried my best to stay as factually correct to the 1940s during World War II in Germany.
To the important stuff.
Yes, and I still had the fantasy, but the fantasy didn't take away or change the history part of it, if that makes sense. Matter of fact, I used it to even implement in the fantasy world of certain patterns in the system, right? So I guess that's for me. I feel like I'm all for making change, and I feel like there needs to be a balance. I think there's a place for both. If we just have too much of one thing, it throws us off balance, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm not like fully opposed to what you're saying, but I understand the arguments being made on, I guess,
on that side?
This side. Yeah, I understand where they're coming from, but ultimately it doesn't mean I would cut it out completely.
So from your background and coming as a journalist, you want to show the truth.
Exactly.
And you don't want to gloss over the truth, and you don't want to say it's all okay now. So I get that. And then on my side, with my head in the clouds and just wanting to have a fun Regency era drama that includes everyone, and we're not worried about the real issues of that time. We just want to see different people represented in romance. Like you said, there's room for both.
There is.
Hey, Positively Literary. My name is Saoirse Tahir, and while I'm not an author, I am an avid reader, and I hold a Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of Lethbridge. Bianca and Stephanie have given me really good perspectives on either side of this question. I'd like to give something that's a little more middle of the road, but also talk about how historians might approach this idea of writing history and rewriting history, whether that be in academics or in the media. First and foremost, how we portray history, regardless of the medium that that's going through, academic or otherwise, has a significant impact on our cultural identity and our cultural memory. So how we remember the past, how we view the people that are involved in it, why it happened, what impact that has on us in the modern day, and how that shapes our identity as people. So Norse and Viking culture portrayed in media is really popular right now, and it has impacted quite significantly people's cultural and ethnic identity in North America and in Europe, and that is a very significant part of media, is that can have a really positive impact on remembering history and keeping it relevant. People have a lot of pride and a lot of fun with relating to people in the past. However, that can be used for less than savory ideologies as well, and be rewritten in a way that's not positively impacting our culture today. Witchcraft is also a really good example. It has been portrayed in media throughout the decades, and has had a big impact on how we approach feminism movements and modern women's rights movements, which can be great. But it can also leave out a lot of the nuance. While there are some really great feminist perspectives on the witch trials in early modern Europe, there are other really good perspectives, and not every country handled them the same way. So there's a lot of the history that's being lost that is really interesting and could be portrayed in media in a really, really neat way. So as far as rewriting history, there is power that comes from portraying people in the past, because we can really make people believe in our version of that reality. And so the challenge for historians in any context is to represent experiences in a meaningful and culturally authentic way, which is a quote from Dr. Herbert Rice, who deals with children's history as a historian. It is tricky for historians, even if we're just writing an academic paper, to balance that perspective. On the other hand, I think we should really have fun with history, and it can keep it relevant and it can keep it alive. Reimagining these events and these people to fit our contemporary needs and values has a good place, I think, and I don't think it should be taken away. I just think it should be done responsibly. Everyone should be able to see themselves in the media that they are consuming, in the genres that they like. I love how Bridgerton has taken a historical period and made it fit our contemporary values. And it can go a long way in getting people interested in history. You can watch Bridgerton and think, I really like this time period, I really like the fashion, I want to know more about it, and they learn more about it. And we all know that it's not exactly how this event might have happened, but it can get us engaged in the history rather than losing it, which does happen, and it's really unfortunate. So I think there's place for both. There's place for sticking to historical facts in media. A good point, too, is that even the most historically accurate piece of media has to take artistic license. Because there's just things we don't know. People's opinions, people's perspectives on a lot of issues just have been lost to time. And no amount of research is ever going to fix that in a lot of cases. And sometimes if you kept an event completely historically accurate and you took no creative license, it would be really boring a lot of times. So I think that we need to, when we're reimagining or rewriting history, we really need to do it in a way that is responsible. But I think it is a really, really good way to keep people engaged, to keep the history alive, to keep it relevant, and to teach us about events and people and different perspectives. So yeah, in conclusion, there's a place for both. It can be done poorly, it can be done really well. But either way, just enjoy what you enjoy. Thanks.
I mean, it was fun to explore the topic and to drink my very delicious passion fruit latte. And it was fun to have a reason to dress up.
I know, it's always fun.
What era do you think you're in here?
The
this, I
laces.
feel, is very 20s, and I love that. And I'm just a different style of 20s with the pearls. It's the flapper.
You're more the
dancing flapper
dancer.
girl. I forgot to use this to point and, well, okay, I don't smoke. So join us next week on
Positively Literary. Stay classy.
We'll see you next time, doll. Where's my cigar?
Doll.
See you next time, doll.
That's so funny. Do you want to redo that?
It's really warm under these lights. I say that.
You're gonna have haters.
It's chickens that were already ready for eating. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Am I taller than you?
No, I'm taller than you.
Just this part of my body. Today's episode is about Bridgerton. No. I'm gonna cut this in editing because I can't think. Detective. Okay. So where the director. I said director. What was the thing again?
A reporter?
The person who investigates the scene of the crime.
The investigator.
It starts with a D, and he investigates, and he comes in, and he's detective. Okay. I forgot again.
It's a detective.
Thank you. Okay. We're back.
I just feel if we forget our history, we forget a part of ourselves.